You think this is funny? Case number 2847. Traffic violation. $83 fine. A 16-year-old kid standing in Providence Municipal Court wearing a Supreme hoodie with AirPods still dangling from his pocket, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. His name was Marcus Chen, and what should have been a simple ticket dismissal was about to become a lesson in respect that would change courtroom protocol forever. But here's what Marcus didn't know. He didn't know who he was talking to, and he definitely didn't know that Judge Frank Caprio had been watching him since the moment he walked through those doors. Watching the way Marcus carried himself, watching the weight in his shoulders that didn't match the arrogance in his eyes. Because Judge Caprio was about to discover something that would flip this entire case upside down. This wasn't about disrespect. This was about a teenager who'd been failed by every adult system designed to protect him. And what started as an eye roll, what started as typical teenage attitude, would expose a heartbreaking truth that made the judge do something he'd never done in 38 years on the bench. So here's what I need you to ask yourself. Would Judge Caprio crush this cocky teenager with a maximum penalty? Or would his legendary compassion find something everyone else missed? What happens when disrespect meets a judge who refuses to judge by appearances? What happens when the courtroom becomes the first place someone actually looks past the armor a kid's been wearing just to survive? If you've ever been judged before anyone knew your story, if you're watching from a place where respect felt like the only currency you had left, then you need to hear this. Subscribe to Judgment Stories, because sometimes the most disrespectful moment leads to the most profound act of grace. And I'm warning you right now, this one starts rough. The beginning is uncomfortable. But stay with me, because where this goes will restore your faith that the system can still work when the right person is paying attention. It's Tuesday, 2:15 in the afternoon. Providence Municipal Court, Courtroom 3A. The room smells like old wood and anxiety. The bailiff calls the case. Case 2847. State versus Marcus Chen. Failure to stop at red light. Lincoln Avenue and Hope Street. And Marcus walks in like he owns the place, hands shoved deep in his pockets, no eye contact with anyone. That hoodie was expensive, probably $200, but it wasn't fashion. It was armor. Everything about the way this kid moved screamed, "I don't care what you think." But Judge Caprio had seen enough teenagers in his courtroom to know the difference between kids who don't care and kids who care. Much they have to pretend they don't. Marcus's court-appointed attorney looked nervous. This was probably her third case of the day, and she already knew this wasn't going to be simple. The officer who wrote the ticket, Officer Mendoza, sat forward in his seat, professional, measured. And then there were two other people in the gallery, two women who kept exchanging glances every time Marcus shifted his weight or avoided eye contact. Later, we'd learn they were school counselors from Lincoln High School. And they weren't there by accident. Judge Caprio leaned forward. His voice was gentle, almost grandfatherly. "Mr. Chen, do you understand why you're here today?" Marcus shrugged. One shoulder, barely perceptible. "I guess." Two words, dripping with teenage indifference. His attorney actually winced. Officer Mendoza sat up straighter. And those two counselors in the back? They exchanged another look. This one said everything. Here we go again. The citation was straightforward. Ran a red light at 11:47 p.m. No passengers in the vehicle, driving his mother's car without permission. The initial defense was equally straightforward. The light was yellow, Marcus said, still not making eye contact. Cop just wanted to meet his quota. And that's when Judge Caprio did something interesting. He leaned forward even more. "That's interesting, Marcus. Because Officer Mendoza doesn't work on quota. Providence doesn't do quotas. Never has. And according to this report, you were on your phone when this happened." He paused. "Let that sink in. Walk me through what you were doing at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night." Marcus's jaw tightened. Just driving. Just driving. In your mother's car. Without permission. On your phone. Through a red light." Judge Caprio picked up another piece of paper. "There's a notation here from your school resource officer. 3 separate incidents in the past 4 months." He looked up. Bailiff, please pull any related juvenile records and contact information for Lincoln High School. That's when the two women in the gallery stood up. The older one, late 50s, gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, raised her hand. Your Honor, may I approach? Judge Caprio nodded. State your name for the record. Patricia Rodriguez, school counselor at Lincoln High School. Your Honor, I need to tell you something about Marcus. But before she could continue, Judge Caprio held up his hand. Miss Rodriguez, I appreciate you being here. But first, I need to establish the facts of this case. Then we'll hear from you. He turned back to Marcus. Mr. Chen, I'm going to read you a timeline, and I want you to tell me if any of these facts are incorrect. He picked up the file, started reading. His voice was measured, deliberate. September 14th. Verbal altercation with a teacher. You were written up for what the report calls uncharacteristic hostility. Marcus said nothing. October 3rd. Suspended for 3 days for insubordination. The details here say you walked out of class when a teacher asked you to put your phone away. Still nothing. October 29th. Truancy. 6 absences in 2 weeks. No explanations provided. No parent contact. Marcus's hands balled into fists in his pockets. And then November 12th, the night of this citation, 11:47 p.m. You run a red light while on your phone, driving your mother's car without permission. Judge Caprio looked up. Marcus, I'm going to ask you again. Walk me through that night. What were you doing? I told you. Driving. Where were you going? Just out. At midnight, on a school night, in your mother's car. Judge Caprio's voice didn't rise, didn't get angry, just persistent. Marcus, I've been doing this a long time, and I can tell when someone's hiding something. The question is whether you're hiding something because you're guilty or because you're scared. For the first time, Marcus looked up, met the judge's eyes, and for just a second, that armor cracked, just a hairline fracture. But enough. Officer Mendoza, Judge Caprio said, never breaking eye contact with Marcus. I'd like to see the body camera footage from the traffic stop. The courtroom went quiet. The bailiff set up the laptop, connected it to the monitor, and then the video played. You could see Marcus's mother's car, a 2015 Honda Accord, pulled over on the side of Lincoln Avenue. Officer Mendoza approached the driver's side window, professional, calm. License and registration, please. On the video, you could hear Marcus. Whatever, man. Just write the ticket. Officer Mendoza kept his voice even. Sir, I need your license and registration. In the glove box. Marcus's voice was sharp, defensive. You're all the same anyway. Nobody actually cares. Judge Caprio paused the video. Marcus, is that you on the tape? Yeah. And those words, nobody actually cares. You meant that? I was stressed that night. Stress doesn't give you permission to endanger others by running red lights. Stress doesn't give you permission to disrespect an officer who's doing his job. Judge Caprio leaned back. But that phrase you used, nobody actually cares. Let's come back to that, because I think that might be the most honest thing you've said since you walked in here. He turned to Miss Rodriguez. Now I'm ready to hear from you. Miss Rodriguez stood up, walked to the front of the courtroom, and when she spoke, her voice was shaking. Your Honor, Marcus has been spiraling since his mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in August. The courtroom went silent. He's her primary caregiver. His father passed away 3 years ago from a heart attack. Marcus is 16 years old. He's terrified, and he's completely alone. Judge Caprio looked at Marcus, then back at Miss Rodriguez. Continue. I've been trying to get him connected with family services for 2 months. The waiting list is 11 weeks. We have no emergency support system for kids in his situation. None. He's managing his mother's medications, getting her to appointments, keeping the household running, working part-time at a grocery store to help with bills, and we expect him to just keep showing up to school like everything's fine. She turned to look at Marcus. There are 3 other students at Lincoln in similar situations right now. No resources, no support. Just kids trying to hold their families together while every system that should be helping them says, "We'll get to you eventually." Judge Caprio was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to the bailiff. "Pull everything. School attendance records, hospital visit logs, social services applications. Every piece of documentation related to this family. I want it on my desk in 10 minutes." The bailiff left. The courtroom waited. Marcus stared at his shoes. Miss Rodriguez sat back down, and Judge Caprio did something unusual. He asked Marcus's attorney to approach the bench. They spoke in whispers for almost 3 minutes. When the attorney returned to her seat, she looked stunned. The bailiff came back, arms full of files. Judge Caprio started reading, out loud. And with every sentence, the picture became clearer and more heartbreaking. 14 hospital visits with your mother in the past 90 days. His voice was steady, but you could hear something underneath it. Something that sounded like controlled anger, but not at Marcus. Applied for emergency assistance September 2nd. Status, still pending. He flipped another page. Your GPA dropped from 3.8 to 2.1 in one semester. Another page. You're working 25 hours a week at a grocery store, making $9.50 an hour. Judge Caprio did the math out loud. That's approximately $950 a month before taxes. Your mother's medical bills show outstanding balances, totaling $63,000. Monthly expenses for medications alone are running about $800. He looked up. Marcus, who's paying the rent? My mom's disability covers most of it. Most of it. What about the rest? Marcus said nothing. What about food, utilities, gas to get to the hospital? I handle it. You handle it. A 16-year-old child is managing approximately $2,100 a month in expenses on a part-time grocery store salary while caring for a dying parent and trying to maintain a high school. Education. Judge Caprio set the papers down, and nobody helped. Nobody stepped in. Nobody said, "This is too much for a child to carry." He picked up another document. Miss Rodriguez, it says here you submitted an emergency request for family services assistance. What was the response? They told me they'd get to us when they could. Standard protocol is 8 to 12 weeks for non-life-threatening cases. Non-life-threatening. Judge Caprio repeated the words like they tasted bitter. Stage 4 cancer is non-life-threatening? The mother isn't a minor, Your Honor, so the case doesn't qualify for emergency status. But her son is a minor, her 16-year-old son, who's functioning as her primary caregiver. Yes, Your Honor, but the system doesn't have a category for that. Judge Caprio was quiet again. Then he did something nobody expected. He asked if anyone had the letter Marcus wrote to his English teacher, the one he never submitted. Miss Rodriguez's face went pale. How did you... It's in the school file. Page 47. Someone photocopied it before Marcus threw it away. He looked at Marcus. Do you remember writing it? Marcus nodded. Barely. Miss Rodriguez, would you read it for the court? Her hands were shaking as she pulled out the copy. Started reading. I can't sleep anymore. Every sound in the apartment makes me think she stopped breathing. I wake up every hour to check if she's still alive. Last Tuesday I took the car because I had to pick up her medication and the pharmacy closes at midnight. I was on the phone with the hospice nurse. She was telling me what to look for. What it means when my mom stops eating, when she stops talking. I was asking if Mom was dying that night, if I should stay home from school the next day. And the light turned red, and I didn't see it because I was asking a stranger if my mother was dying tonight. Miss Rodriguez stopped, looked up. That's where it ends. He ripped the rest of the page out. The courtroom was completely silent. And then Marcus's shoulders started shaking. He covered his face with his hands. And this 16-year-old kid who'd walked in wearing attitude like armor just broke. I'm sorry, he said through his hands. I'm so sorry. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending I'm okay. I'm not okay. I'm so tired. And nobody cares. Nobody sees me. I'm just supposed to keep going and keep smiling and keep showing up, and nobody cares that I'm drowning. Judge Caprio let him cry. Didn't rush him. Didn't tell him to pull himself together. Just waited. And when Marcus finally looked up, eyes red, face wet, Judge Caprio spoke. Marcus, I'm going to ask you some yes or no questions, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay. Did you take the car without permission? Yes. Did you run that red light? Yes. Were you on your phone? Yes, but I'm not asking about your mother yet. I'm asking if you were on your phone. Yes. Could someone have been hurt? If another car had been at that intersection, could there have been an accident? This day, Graham, right into state. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Thank you for being honest. Judge Caprio leaned forward. Now, I'm going to tell you what I see. I see a child who broke the law. That's real. The danger was real. You put lives at risk, and that matters. But I also see a child who was on the phone with a hospice nurse at midnight, trying to figure out if his mother was dying. I see a child who's been carrying the weight of an adult's world on shoulders that aren't done growing. And I see every system that should have caught you before you got to this point. And every single one of them failed. He picked up Officer Mendoza's report. Officer Mendoza, in your report, you wrote that the defendant was uncooperative and dismissive. Do you stand by that? Officer Mendoza stood. Your Honor, I do. But I also didn't know what he was dealing with. If I'd known. If you'd known, you might have handled it differently. But you didn't know because nobody told you. Nobody flagged this family. Nobody said there's a child here who needs help. Judge Caprio set the report down. Officer Mendoza, you did your job correctly. The failure wasn't yours. The failure was systemic. 12 seconds of silence. Judge Caprio just sat there. Marcus stared at his hands. Miss Rodriguez wiped her eyes. Officer Mendoza looked down. The attorney fidgeted with her pen, and the courtroom held its breath. Finally, Judge Caprio spoke. Sometimes the court needs to be quiet so the truth can be loud enough to matter. So here's the truth. Marcus, you broke the law. The evidence is clear. Body camera footage, officer testimony, your own admission. You endangered yourself and others. Officer Mendoza is one of the most fair-minded officers I know, and his report is accurate. But this case is about more than a traffic violation. This is about a system that abandoned a child when he needed it most. He paused, looked directly at Marcus. Here's my finding. $83 fine suspended. You will not pay it, your family cannot afford it, and making you pay would be adding cruelty to tragedy. However, you will complete the following plan. Not as punishment, Marcus, as partnership, because I'm not giving up on you, and I'm not going to let you give up on yourself. Judge Caprio pulled out a piece of paper, started writing as he spoke. First, Miss Rodriguez has secured an emergency placement for in-home care for your mother. A nurse will come to your home 3 times a week. You will accept this help within 48 hours. You will stop trying to do this alone. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Second, you will attend 8 weeks of teen caregiver support group. There's one that meets every Thursday at the community center on Hope Street. You'll meet other kids carrying impossible burdens. You'll learn you're not alone. Third, you'll complete a defensive driving course, not because you're a bad driver, but because your mother needs you alive, and I need you to understand that your safety matters. He kept writing. Fourth, you'll return to therapy. The school counselor you stopped seeing in October, Miss Rodriguez told me you canceled your appointments. You'll meet with her twice a week, minimum. Non-negotiable. Fifth, you're going to write a letter, but not to me, to the Marcus, 6 months from now. Tell him what you needed someone to say to you today. Tell him the truth about what this felt like, and tell him what you hope he remembers. Judge Caprio looked up. Sixth, community service. 50 hours at a hospice care center. You'll read to patients, sit with families, Be the presence you wish someone had been for you. You're going to learn that your pain doesn't have to be wasted. It can become medicine for someone else. And 7th, you will maintain a 2.5 GPA. Because your father would want you to graduate, and your mother will want to see you walk across that stage. The courtroom was silent. Marcus, mercy isn't me letting you off easy. It's me believing you're worth fighting for when you're too tired to fight for yourself. This plan isn't punishment. It's a ladder out of the hole you've been in, but you have to climb it. Nobody can do it for you. Don't mistake my compassion for permission to repeat this. This is your one chance to accept help instead of carrying everything alone. Do you understand? Marcus nodded, wiped his face. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you graduate. But Judge Caprio wasn't done. He turned to the court reporter. Make sure you're getting all of this on the record, because I'm about to make some recommendations that extend beyond this case. He pulled out another sheet of paper, started writing again. Effective immediately, I'm recommending the following policy changes to the Providence school system and family court system. First, Emergency Caregiver Support Protocol. Any student identified as a primary caregiver for a family member with a serious medical condition will receive a 48-hour rapid response from social services. Not 8 weeks, 48 hours. Second, Mandatory Screening System. School counselors will identify at-risk students within 72 hours of any major family medical event. We're not waiting for kids to fail before we notice them. He kept going. Third, Transportation Assistance Fund. The city will establish an emergency fund for students managing family medical crises, so no child ever has to choose between their mother's medication and breaking the law again. Fourth, Teen Caregiver Liaison Position. One dedicated staff member across the district whose only job is supporting kids like Marcus. And fifth, Judicial Discretion Training. Every judge in this courthouse will receive training on recognizing trauma-driven behavior versus malicious intent. Because if we can't tell the difference between a criminal and a child in crisis, we have no business wearing these robes. Judge Caprio looked straight at the camera in the back of the courtroom, the one that records every hearing. If you're watching this, if you're a judge, or a school administrator, or a social worker, and you believe a child's disrespect might be a cry for help, I'm asking you to adopt these policies. Share this case. Make noise. Because Marcus isn't the only kid drowning in a system that's supposed to save him. And then court was adjourned. But the story didn't end there, because Judge Caprio meant what he said. This wasn't just talk. This was action. And over the next 8 weeks, something remarkable happened. Day 1. The in-home care nurse arrived at Marcus's apartment. Professional, kind, efficient. She taught Marcus how to administer his mother's medications properly, how to monitor her vitals, how to recognize warning signs. And for the first time in 4 months, Marcus slept through the night. He told Miss Rodriguez later, "I forgot what that felt like. I forgot that I was allowed to sleep." Day 4, first support group meeting. Marcus said nothing, sat in the back row, arms crossed, but he listened to a 15-year-old girl describe the exact same exhaustion. The same guilt over feeling angry at her sick father. The same isolation. And after the meeting, Marcus cried in the parking lot for 20 minutes. Not sad crying, relief crying. The kind that happens when you finally realize you're not the only one. Day 9, defensive driving course. The instructor made a note in his file. Extremely focused, asked thoughtful questions about night visibility and reaction time. This kid takes road safety seriously. What the instructor didn't know was that Marcus was thinking about that red light every time he sat behind the wheel now. Thinking about what could have happened. Day 15. Marcus walked back into Miss Rodriguez's office for therapy. First thing he said was, "I thought asking for help meant I was failing her." Judge Caprio made me realize I was failing both of us by not asking. Days 18 through 45, hospice volunteering. The first week, Marcus just cleaned rooms, stocked supplies, Avoided eye contact with families. Week 2, he started reading to patients. Just articles from the newspaper, nothing deep. Week 3, he sat with an elderly man whose family hadn't visited in 2 months. The man was dying, knew it. And he looked at Marcus and said, "You're a good kid. Your mama knows that. Whatever you're beating yourself up about, she knows you're doing your best." Marcus told his support group later, "That's when I finally believed maybe I wasn't drowning her. Maybe just being there was enough." Day 50, he wrote the letter. The one to himself. The first draft, Judge Caprio sent it back. Said it was too formal. Too much like an essay he was writing for a grade. Write like you're talking to your best friend who's going through hell, the note from the judge's clerk said. So Marcus wrote it again. Real this time. Raw. One line read, "Marcus, you were never the problem. You were a child solving problems no child should face, and you survived. That's enough. That will always be enough." But it wasn't perfect. Week 4, Marcus missed 2 hospice shifts because his mother had a medical crisis. Ambulance at 3 a.m. Hospital until dawn. He was terrified he'd failed. Terrified Judge Caprio would revoke everything. He called the court clerk in tears, and the clerk said something that Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. Mercy includes setbacks. You didn't fail. Your mother needed you, and you were there. That's not failure. Come back when you're ready. 8 weeks later, Marcus walked back into courtroom 3A. No hoodie this time. Button-down shirt his mother had ironed the night before, even though her hands were shaking. He made eye contact when he entered, stood up straight. Judge Caprio reviewed the completion reports. All 7 requirements met. Supervisor reports from the hospice. Therapy attendance logs. Letters of completion. Then he did something interesting. He didn't just accept the paperwork. He asked Marcus to explain it. Marcus, tell me what these 8 weeks taught you. And I don't want what you think. I want to hear. I want the truth. Marcus took a breath. I thought respect meant never showing weakness. I learned respect means admitting when you need help. I thought every adult would judge me for failing. Turns out the adults who matter just wanted to catch me before I hit the ground. He paused. I thought taking care of Mom meant doing everything alone. But the nurse taught me that letting someone help me help her, that's love too. And I thought accountability was punishment, but it's not. It's someone caring enough to say, I see you, and I'm not letting you disappear. Judge Caprio was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. You walked in here 8 weeks ago wearing anger like armor. You're leaving here wearing something stronger, honesty. That took more courage than most adults ever find. He pulled out the citation. The original $83 fine. This is permanently dismissed. However, when you graduate high school, I want you to take $83 and give it to another teenager who needs help. Not because you owe me, because you'll remember what it felt like when someone chose to invest in you instead of punish you. Marcus graduated 6 months later, 3.4 GPA. His mother died 4 months after the trial. She was there for his graduation. Wheelchair in the front row. Too weak to clap, but she smiled. And Marcus gave his valedictorian speech about second chances, about judges who see past armor, about systems that should protect children instead of punishing them for surviving. He's at Providence College now, full scholarship, pre-law. Every Saturday, he still volunteers at the hospice center. He's trained 4 other teen volunteers. And he tells every single one of them the same thing. Someone showed up for me. Now we show up for others. The Providence Protocol, as it's now called, has spread to 14 cities across 7 states. Boston created Marcus's law mandatory school screening for teen caregivers. Connecticut established a Youth Caregiver Bill of Rights. 5 cities created youth caregiver advocacy positions. Every policy document cites the same case, Chen versus State, Providence Municipal Court, Judge Frank Caprio presiding. Ms. Rodriguez told a reporter last year, 7 students have come forward since Marcus's case. Every single one is now connected to services within 48 hours. That's 7 kids who aren't drowning alone. The hospice supervisor said parents call asking if their teens can join the volunteer program. Marcus made it okay to admit this is hard. Judge Caprio keeps a photo on his desk. It's a screenshot from that body camera footage, the moment right after Miss Rodriguez revealed Marcus's mother's diagnosis. You can see Marcus's face, the armor cracking, the fear underneath. Judge Caprio keeps it facing him during every hearing. He says it reminds him that disrespect is sometimes the only language grief knows how to speak. He gave an interview about the case, said something that stuck with me. People ask me why I didn't just dismiss the case or throw the book at him. Because both would have been easier, and both would have been wrong. Dismissing it says laws don't matter. Maximum penalty says context doesn't matter. The truth is, both matter. Laws exist to protect us, but humans exist to protect each other. When we forget that second part, we're just enforcing rules, not delivering justice. He went on. Marcus couldn't be both, a perfect son and a perfect student and a perfect citizen. No one can. But we expected him to do all three, with no help, no grace, no humanity. The cruelty wasn't the $83 fine. It was that every adult system saw him struggling and said, "Not my job to help." And that's the real story here. Not about a disrespectful teen, not about a lenient judge, but about what happens when someone finally looks past the attitude and asks, "What's the story I'm not seeing?" About what happens when accountability meets mercy and they work together instead of against each other. Marcus wrote Judge Caprio a letter after his mother died. It said, "You saw my anger and found my pain. You gave me permission to be a scared kid instead of a perfect caregiver. The night Mom died, I held her hand and told her I'd be okay. I believed it because you made me believe someone would catch me. Thank you for not giving up on the kid everyone else had already written off." The citation is framed in Marcus's dorm room now. Below it, a handwritten note. "The day I learned disrespect was grief, and mercy was seeing me when I couldn't see myself." So what do you think? Should every courthouse adopt the Providence Protocol? Have you ever been judged before anyone knew your story? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation matters. These kids matter. Subscribe to Judgment Stories for more stories where judges choose to see the child behind the charge, where one moment of mercy changes a lifetime of pain, where the system finally works the way it was always meant to by protecting the most vulnerable instead of punishing them for surviving. Behind every disrespectful teen might be a child carrying impossible weight. Before you judge the attitude, investigate the story. Rules exist to protect people, not punish them for being human. Compassion isn't weakness, it's the hardest form of strength. And justice means seeing the whole person, not just the moment they broke. That's the lesson of Marcus Chen. That's what Judge Caprio taught us, and that's why this case will matter for generations. This story is a dramatization for educational purposes. It reflects real issues facing teen caregivers, but is not a specific legal case or advice.